Hello, Toy Collector fans, Universal Toy Collector here, and welcome to the channel. And welcome to another episode of My Collecting Life, the weekly series where I get to chat with you, members of the toy collecting community, about your own personal collections, finding out what got you into collecting in the first place, and what gives you that toy collecting buzz. All right then, you lot. So, who is the guest on this week's episode then? Well, why don't we all find out? Sit yourselves down, put your feet up, and make yourselves comfortable. And let's take a look at some of his collection in a musical montage. I with a Sith. Righty ho then, yes, another fantastic Star Wars collection, and I am loving the way they are displayed, and some of those display pieces look absolutely fantastic. It's a pleasure to welcome to the channel for the first time, Ed from Ways of the Sith. Hello, sir. How are you, my friend?
Good, good. How's everything?
I'm okay. Yeah, well, listen, I appreciate you taking the time out to do this. I know you're still not feeling 100%, but run time for this is roughly about an hour. If we go over, it's not an issue, but I'll try to keep it as much to the hour as possible, just so you don't have to overdo things. So, yeah, what I've got, Ed, I've got 10 questions for you, all about you and your collection. So when you're ready, then we'll crack on.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Right. What toy lines were you into as a kid, and what memories do you have of those toy lines?
So I was a big wrestling, like I'm still am a big wrestling fan, but like as a kid, wrestling probably like the Hasbros,
Okay.
the smaller Hasbros, they were probably like the real thing. Like I was into collecting as a kid.
Yeah.
Um, and then I started getting into like the Toy Biz X-Men, Spider-Man stuff. That was
Okay.
kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like at the as I started to get a little older, that was kind of in that range. But yeah, those were really like the two things that honestly got me into collecting. I wasn't, as much as I love Star Wars, I didn't collect Star Wars as a kid simply because like there was just so much stuff at the time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
I want to say probably what was before the prequel, like the prequel trilogy stuff that came out. That line was like out, and
Oh,
that line
Power of the
was,
Force.
yeah, so like that was out and that was like full blown. So like I
Yeah.
never wanted to just like dive into it. It was like one of those things where I waited until being an adult to get into
Oh,
Black
okay.
Series and stuff like that.
Awesome.
But
So, what was it about wrestling then? Because I will admit to you, Ed, I'm not a big wrestling fan. I could never get into it, and the reason being is because the wrestling back in the UK when I was a kid was
mhm,
totally different to how you guys do it in the States. I mean, we had
okay.
people like Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks, and seeing two really big guys like rumbling around in like leotards wasn't a good look, mate. If I'm honest with you, it was, and I couldn't get to grips with that, and I was just like, no, I'm watching this. It's a bit much. So, what was it for wrestling then that got you into it? Why was you so interested as a
So
kid?
so I know our good buddy Chris Smith is the same way. He's an avid hater of wrestling. He busts my chops all the time about it. Believe it or not, so like my mom was really into wrestling. My
Okay,
mom, like I live in New Jersey, so I'm not too far from New York. I'm about maybe 2 hours now. But when I was a kid, we lived like right across the way from the city.
yeah,
So for my mom and her dad, that was kind of their thing. They'd go to Madison Square Garden. They'd go see, the wrestling because it was on every week at
yeah,
Madison Square Garden. And that was kind of their thing. So like when I became a kid, that was kind of the one thing like me and my mom bonded over was that same, love for wrestling. And she's the one
okay,
who kind of got me into it. And so like now we still go every once in a while. I would, like when they're local, I try to grab tickets for so that like we can go as like a old thing, but like we went to WrestleMania, we went to a SummerSlam, we've
yeah.
been to a lot of different events and stuff like that.
No,
So
that's
yeah,
awesome. That's
just
awesome.
one of those things. I guess the storytelling and like the whole aspect of, like once you get invested in the characters and everything like that, it's a little
Yeah.
easier to look past the
Yeah.
leotard aspect of
Was
it.
oh, mate, it wasn't easy looking past some of those leotards, mate, especially some of the stuff in the UK going on back in the 80s. It was quite horrendous, mate, to be honest with you. But I guess you've got to look at it as a kind of theatre, haven't you, really? Because it is
Yeah,
it is it is all a big act. I mean, it
yeah,
took me a long time to realise it was all sort of like made up and sort of like acting
yeah,
sort of thing. So because I wasn't into it, I couldn't grasp the concept of it. But
yeah.
like I say, it's pretty much like theatre, isn't it?
Yeah, they still get hurt. They still have
Yeah,
physicality, and like a lot of the stuff that they're doing is very much real. It's just
yeah,
it's determined finish and who's going to win and stuff like that. But
yeah.
I, I give them a lot of respect. I worked when I went to college. I worked for TNA Wrestling, which was at the time by Universal Studios in Orlando,
Okay. Yeah,
and so like I got to see it firsthand, like how much they put into it and how hurt some of these guys actually are, and
yeah.
some of the behind the scenes stuff that you really don't normally get to like appreciate as just being like a regular wrestling fan.
How much has wrestling changed then from when you were a kid to now? Has it changed drastically or has it not changed at all?
I think like when I was younger, Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, and like that was the big Attitude Era. So that was,
Yeah,
I think, the big boom of wrestling where like everyone was watching. I think there was upwards of like 8 million people watching at one time on a show and flipping
wow,
back and forth
wow.
between like the two shows going on at the same
Yeah,
time. But I think now it went through like a whole period where it toned down very much and it got very like PG era, as opposed to like pushing the envelope as to some of the stuff they were doing in the 90s. So
yeah,
I think that's like really where it's changed, but it's starting to come back around to like pure athletics, I guess you could say, and like actually putting on good matches. And like if you can
yeah,
go out there and put on a really good match and like people are invested from the time the bell rings to the time somebody wins, I think like that's really where things are progressing nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even as a kid, I didn't realize that they did wrestling figures. So
Okay.
I wasn't aware of the wrestling the figures at all. So I mean, I was predominantly Star Wars, G.I. Joe, He-Man. I noticed those, but maybe it's because I was so transfixed on those kind of lines that I didn't really sort of notice the wrestling. The only so I found out about like the American wrestling was through Rocky 3 when you had Hulk Hogan as
Okay.
Thunderlips.
Okay. All
And I
right.
thought, wow, this guy is a giant of a man. And then I kind of like saw more of him, and it was more sort of like prominent over here, or it was more known to me over here simply because of Rocky 3 and Hulk Hogan being in it. I mean,
And that
did you
popularity probably catapulted it a little bit more to being a little bit
oh,
more easy access to, as opposed to like what it was
yeah,
previously.
because I don't think back in the day we didn't get American wrestling over here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was,
It wasn't probably until like after the WrestleManias, and like once WrestleMania started, I think that's when like they started to get, you know, expand out and
yeah,
national, because it used to be like a very localized thing where like you could only get it and watch it if you were in like the local area, and it would just be, you know, your local promotion that was
yeah,
going on. Like,
yeah.
yeah, I could see that. Yeah, probably somewhere in the beginning of the 90s is probably like
Okay.
more so when it became more easily access to, you know, everybody around the world.
And when did women become involved in wrestling? Because I gotta say, I was mightily shocked to find out that women were into wrestling and did boxing, and not because I'm not coming across as being like a sexist view or anything like that, but
Mhm.
I can't see the appeal of two women knocking 10 bars of crap out of each other in a boxing match, or like slamming each other around in wrestling. I don't know. There's just some things I may be a bit old fashioned, and forgive me if I do come across as being sexist. That's not
Oh
how I'm
no,
coming
no,
across,
no, no.
but
I don't take it that way.
I can't see the appeal to that either.
So like years ago, like when they didn't, they were just more so managers and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then probably like during the 90s is like when women actually started getting in the ring and like learning how to wrestle. It wasn't
Wow.
until it wasn't until probably like as recently as like maybe 10 years ago where like the wrestling for the women really stepped up.
Yeah,
Now you have some women wrestlers that are like on par with the men and are just as good and like maybe even
that's
better.
incredible.
There's like you probably know who Ric Flair is, right? Like
No,
no.
no, 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 no.
I thought maybe
I'm
pop
still not
culture.
into it really.
I thought maybe pop culture wise, like that would transfer over because
Oh,
he's up
okay.
there with like Hulk Hogan as like a world
Okay.
renowned like just celebrity.
Yeah.
But his daughter is like one of the best wrestlers in the world, like men or
Wow.
women right now. Like
Wow.
she's really great.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, what about Christmas times and birthdays then? I mean, how were they for you? I mean, I guess because you're into wrestling and stuff like that, you got predominantly all wrestling stuff and stuff and bits and bobs.
Yeah, yeah. And then really, like, so we still had like the J.C. Penney catalog, growing
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
Like that's what we used to get, and that's what we used to, you know, flip through and circle and like, all right, fold the page or circle whatever it is on the page that you wanted. So, that's around the time like when I started getting into like G.I. Joe and
okay,
Marvel stuff. Like it was early Toy Biz. It was kind of like at the tail end of the superhero
yeah.
stuff, and then into the Toy Biz line. So like that's kind of when I got into a lot of those other, you know, toy lines, because then we had the access to order it from the catalog or whatever the case may be.
So, what was it about GI Joe then? I mean, did you? I mean, what year did you start getting into GI Joe then? Because would it have been from the beginning, or was it a bit later on?
No, it was a bit later on. I'm born in '87, so
Oh,
the
okay,
original show was already running like at that time. So like
yeah,
I knew it was something that I'd watch on Saturday morning, you know,
yeah.
cartoons. But then I think that's like around the time the movie, the you know, I finally got to see like the movie. I think that's like when I was hooked, because then I used to just play the cassette tape over and over again
Yeah,
and just watch,
yeah.
you know, the original movie. So
Mm.
them kind of doing that was really like my you know my introduction into it, and then having Sergeant Slaughter be from wrestling and
Yeah,
transition
yeah,
over,
tie in, yeah, yeah,
it was an easy way for me to like, oh, Sergeant Slaughter, and like, you
yeah,
know, kind of
yeah.
get into.
So being like born in '87, then you predominantly had pretty much most of the 90s as childhood. Did you
Mhm.
get into things like the Turtles and Power Rangers? Were they sort of, because they were the big toys at the time, weren't they? Then you had the Nintendo come as well, didn't you? The Nintendo game console and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I did actually just complete the 30th anniversary line for the Rangers. I just did
Oh,
the
wow.
team, like the main team,
Okay.
with the new Hasbro's. But yeah, I didn't. I was into them very much as a kid. Like I remember like watching the first episode. I think like when it came out.
Right.
So Mighty Morphin was like one of the things that was in that block with like the animated Spider-Man show, which is something that like I still hold very dear. I collect all them pretty much on card. I keep that retro wave like on card just because that was something that like I had when I was a kid and it was a
Yeah.
show that I absolutely loved. And then the X-Men and Batman animated series were like
Oh, how cool
that
is the
was
Batman animated series? Yeah.
that was
I
like
know
the
you did.
block. Like that was like Saturday mornings I'd wake up, it'd be, you know, G.I. Joe on one channel, and then you'd flip over and then you'd have, you know, Spider-Man, Power Rangers,
Yeah.
you know, Batman, all this other stuff on the other channel. So it was that yeah, fond memories of that stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, I used to love getting up on a Saturday morning, and obviously the animated cartoons then were different. We had like who was it? Thundercats, Masters of the Universe, GI Joe, and that sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
it transitions the same, doesn't it? So we're still getting up on a Saturday morning watching decent Saturday morning viewing, and I love that, and I kind of miss that really because I don't. It's not the
Oh
same
yeah.
these days. I don't think.
No, and I'm surprised like that nobody's taking advantage of it. You know what I mean? Like one of
Yeah,
these streaming services, one of these networks, like you would think like, hey, if we own these properties, let's kind of recreate that for newer kids. Like, hey, wake up on Saturday morning, throw on Disney Plus, and here's you know, a 3 hour cartoon block of some different shows that we have
yeah.
the rights. You know, like they have all
Do
the
you
Avengers stuff, they have all the Spider-Man stuff. It'd be
do you
easy
think
to
kids
do.
would be into that now? Do you think they would sit and watch that?
I don't know. I don't know. I think if it's done like in a right way, where maybe you're
Yeah,
like, obviously I don't really know like what kids are into nowadays. But yeah, like I think if you presented it like in a cool way and
yeah,
maybe had it to where like you're really targeting the parents to maybe watch it with the kids. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like you're trying
yeah,
to hook the parents in with nostalgia on some shows or cartoons or something that they grew up with, and hey, you know, sit down with your kid and watch stuff you watched as a kid. I think that would be the way to probably market it. You know, or
yeah.
if you want to try to do something like that.
Yeah, yeah, true, true. So as a kid, then, what was your favorite toy line and why, or did it change? Is it like fad to fad? So you sort of like one thing,
Um,
then go on to something else, or have you got one thing that predominantly stands out above everything else?
So my one thing that would stand out like above anything else would probably be that animated Spider-Man line, that 90s animated Toy Biz
Okay,
Spider-Man line. Like
yeah,
they were the figures that literally like when like I watched that show from the beginning, and as soon as the figures came out, that was like one of the things that I absolutely loved. That and X-Men, like they're still my favorites like to this day. It's but yeah, those were probably like my most prized possessions. But yeah, then wrestling
yeah,
figures was still like in there. You know what I mean? That was kind of the other thing that I would still pick up and dabble. It changed for me when they switched over. So like when I was a kid, we had the Hasbro's. It was the tail end of the LJNs, the big like rubber guys,
yeah,
and then they went into like the smaller plastic ones, and that was really like my wrestling figure collection. Then somewhere in like the 90s, they switched over to Jazzwares now, who's
yeah,
they were the company making like the wrestling figures, and they changed the scale. They made them look different, and like that's kind of where I faded out of like collecting wrestling figures at that point because
right,
it was I had to start a whole new collection. It wasn't like you know what I mean. I could just keep adding to who I already had. So like at
yeah,
that point, kind of like all right, yeah, I'm kind of out.
yeah. I mean, that's one reason why I don't sort of like I haven't dipped my toes into the Turtles line yet, or the Power Rangers line yet, because they are both massive lines. You've got so many different versions, you've got so many different companies doing it, and you just and the thing is, you know what it's like when you're collecting, you dive in and you just grab one and think, yeah, I like that one as well. And then you just by the time you know it, you just got a room full of all these different
Yeah.
lines and stuff like that. And that's what frightens me about Turtles and Power Rangers. It's just the sheer size of those lines that
Yeah.
I'm not a completist, but I mean, I don't know. It's just
And that's why like
frightening.
with when they did, I wasn't collecting the Power Rangers line, like the newer one, the Lightning Collection line at all.
Yeah.
I'd pick up like maybe one or two on clearance if I'd see them, and it was more so for like the unmasked head because I like to do a lot of custom stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was more so in that aspect. But then when they announced that they were doing the 30th anniversaries, that's when I was like, you know what? I'm gonna pick up the original team and complete the original team, and
Yeah.
that's all. That's all I wanted to do. I made a little dio for them, and that's pretty much it. I'm not going in anymore on
Yeah.
them.
No, that's
Um,
fair enough.
Turtles, I did just actually pick these up, the two Secret of the Ooze box sets.
Oh wow, how cool are they?
So I picked them up. My buddy is like a
Look at
huge,
that.
huge Turtles fan.
Yeah.
And so I picked these up for him at the beginning of the year. And when I saw them in hand, I was like, these look perfect. Like if I was gonna have a set of turtles, like this would be the set of turtles like I would want to have. So
Yeah.
luckily, maybe a couple weeks ago, I actually found another set in Walmart. So I picked them up for me to just
Which
have.
which line which line are they?
This is the NECA Secret of the Ooze 2. So the second, the second.
They do look good.
Yeah, and like I want to open them, but they look so nice, like in the box, that
Yeah.
I'm kind of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
kind of on the fence about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't
But
blame me. No, they do look good. They
like
really do
that's
look
the
good.
iteration. Like for me, I would love to pick up a set of the Toon Turtles too, which I heard NECA is supposed to be doing like ultimate versions this year of.
Okay.
So maybe when they do those, I'll pick them up one at a time just to have like the
Yeah.
animated line, the four. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
with you. I can't dive in and start picking up side characters and villains.
No, absolutely.
Can't do
Absolutely.
it.
I mean, to be fair, I say I haven't got turtles. I mean, I have picked up a like a third party turtle. It's
Okay.
unlicensed, so I think it's 5K Toys or Fury Toys. I think it is.
Okay.
I got it from Toy Metaverse, so I've picked them up, and it's quite decent. And I'm waiting for the next two to come through. So I think one of them's like they do them autumn, spring, and then winter and summer. So I think I'm
Okay.
waiting for autumn to come through, and then there's the Ninja Master, which is the obviously Master Splinter, but he's not
Okay.
known as Master Splinter. So, but yeah, I mean they look pretty cool, and I think that's about as far as I go. I mean, my wife, bless her, she's been eyeing up the turtles, but again, it's one of those things. If you buy one or two, you probably want a lot. So it's like,
And like at least with turtles, you have to pretty much at least buy four, regardless of like
yeah, yeah,
you,
yeah,
you
yeah,
got to do that main team. So it's like once
yeah.
you're in on four, then you're kind of like, all right, well, I'm already in, but
Yeah, it's so easy to do, though, isn't it?
it's
They
so easy.
hook you in, don't they?
That's how I end up with a lot of the stuff that I have. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm just gonna pick up this one, and then next thing you know, like, oh, I'm collecting the line.
I think the word for that is weak-willed, and I think we're all
Yeah,
guilty of it. Definitely, isn't it?
like
Absolutely.
the Jada Street Fighter stuff. Really, like I keep saying like I'm only gonna pick up. I picked up Ryu and I picked up Chung Li, but then every
Yeah.
time they advertise a new one, I'm just like, man, that looks so good. Like I guess I'm picking that up too.
So yeah, they again, but it's just something that I think no, I can't. I can't. When did you stop playing with your toys, and when did you become a collector?
So probably early teens was probably when I got out in the world and started doing other stuff. But I came back around probably somewhere in my 20s when the Marvel Universe stuff came out, the 3.75 line.
Yeah.
I I really loved that, and I thought it was such a nice like you're kind of paying homage to the figure where you're getting really like the perfect comic book version of
Yeah.
of the figure that you want, and they were small in scale, so like I ended up picking that lineup when it started, and then ended up completing the whole entire wave, like the whole entire thing,
Yeah.
and then once it ended, I was kind of like left with like, oh well, now what? Like I've been collecting this line for the past 4 or 5 years now, and they just ended it. So it was like, all right. And then that's kind of when I got into Black Series. Like that's kind of what opened the door, and then really like I think kicked off my collecting probably the most once I started like not having the Marvel Universe stuff to collect anymore, it was like, all right, well, I'm gonna start picking up the Star Wars stuff because that was
Yeah,
starting to hit stores around that time. And I liked the fact that it was 6 inch. I thought that
yeah,
was a really, appealing thing for me compared to like the vintage or the 3.75 stuff that they were doing.
yeah. I mean, when did Black Series start then? Because I didn't realize Black Series was a thing until I think it was 2017, and that was the 40th
Mm.
anniversary of Star Wars. And we walked into our local Toys R Us, and I just saw these throwback cards of the 40th anniversary wave from the Black Series, and I just thought, wow, these look absolutely amazing. So I was like, I was like, I love that one, I love that one, I love that one. So I managed to get those. Then I got the rest for Christmas because some of them were like I didn't realize were harder to come by.
Yeah,
But then
yeah.
after that, I started watching people like Robo from the Foosh and then getting into
Mm.
like sort of like toy reviews and figure reviews. And I just didn't realize that there were so many different lines. You had Black Series, you had Marvel Legends, you had
Yeah.
it was just crazy. And I think that's what really sort of like pushed me on to get these extra figures and other figures and stuff like that in different lines.
Yeah, like that's about the time. So like I know they did the first wave of Black Series. They were in like the black boxes with the orange line.
That's it,
And
yeah.
like I remember them hitting Walmarts. So like uh I'm trying to think what year that was. Probably somewhere around there, 2016, 2017, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Because like a Marvel Universe ended around that same time, and then Legends came back for the first time. So it was like when Legends kicked back off, I want to say Black Series like was kind of coming back at that, starting around that same time.
Yeah.
So that was probably really what like snowballed
Okay.
everything. And
Yeah.
then more recently, it used to just be like, oh, I'll pick up one figure here and there, or, but then eventually it transitioned into like me fully collecting.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, so it didn't put you off then the fact that Hasbro went plastic free for a while. Did you still collect
um,
or
it
did that
it
kind of put you
so
off?
so it put me off on certain things. I love the legends on the retro cards, so like that for me was really where like, oh man, they're gonna take those away, and it's like that's kind of the only thing I was buying as far as
Yeah.
legends were. But yeah, I only picked up a couple of like the plastic free things, and I hated the fact that I had to open them because so before I started opening stuff, I used to just strictly be like inbox collector. And
Right.
it took me up until a couple of years really to just start opening stuff and because I was running out of space. So that was
Yeah.
really like what resorted to me finally to open stuff. And so certain things I like to buy, I like to keep in box and just keep in box. I'm not going to open them. I'm not going to touch them. But with Star Wars, with certain things, I'll open them up and put them on display. But that's
Yeah.
that's kind of yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So, um, what toy lines are you currently into then? So, what do you currently collect at this moment in time?
So I do Black Series. I'm no longer like a completist on it, and I think
Yeah.
this year that will be the line I kind of take a step back from this year because it seems like a lot of the stuff that they've been doing, it's one step forward, 10 steps back with the Star Wars team, and it's
Yeah.
the prices with them getting up, I pretty much have like everybody that I need. You know what I mean? As far as like the main characters or like characters that I like. If not, I've started getting into like customizing and like making my own. So like I'm a big fan of the Inquisitors. I pretty much
Yeah.
made like all the Inquisitors already. So I have
Oh
to get a
wow.
couple more kits and I'll finish them off and then they'll be complete and probably better than whatever Hasbro's going to put out.
Awesome. So
um,
you
I
mentioned
do.
sorry, you mentioned customizing. What got
Mhm.
you into that? What gave you the idea to think, oh, I can do that?
That was more recently. So like
Okay.
I also just to finish your other thing, I also collect GI Joe Classified. That's like my
Okay.
main that I'm into, and then I still
We'll,
do
we'll
the
come
retro
back onto
card.
GI Joe in a second for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely classified.
But customizing really was like a newer thing. I think probably within the last like year or two is something that I actually got into, and it was
Wow.
just mainly like, oh wow, I didn't know that they could do all this stuff. Like 3D printing really got so advanced now where like the minute something happens in a show, probably within 24 hours, you'll have that set piece or that prop up on, where you can download the file and print it yourself. So it's like
Wow.
some stuff like that, it's just insane to me. And like I really became friends with a lot of people that like are into 3D printing or resin printing,
Yeah.
and it kind of just took off from there. And it started like really small with just like head swaps or like, oh, this so kind of looks like so and so, like this might work for this figure. To now where like I can literally like pick up a cast of somebody and like make the figure. You know what I mean? And
Wow.
pretty
I
much
mean,
it's
and you paint
a
them
lot of
yourselves. The heads, you paint
yeah.
the heads yourself. I mean, gee whiz, that's got to take so much time. I mean, I don't think I'd have the patience to do it, or the eyesight, if I'm honest with you. But
And so it took me a while. Like I'm only
yeah.
now just getting to the point where like I was originally buying stuff from Syndicate Customs on he's from Australia and he does
Okay.
a lot of 3D printing and stuff like that. But he's one of the few people that actually sells like heads already painted. So
Okay.
a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah.
a lot of the times what I would do is I'll buy like the other stuff, I'll buy the kit or I'll buy like the 3D printed pieces and then I'll paint that and then buy the head already pre-done because
Yeah.
I didn't feel I was very good on like doing eyes or really blending skin tones and stuff like that. So
Mm.
now I've started to, all right, let me try like this in my hand right now. It's a Yaddle head. So it's just a Yoda, head
Yeah.
with the hair on it, and I
Wow.
painted it up and did the eyes on it. But I feel a lot
Wow.
more comfortable with like aliens and creatures than I
Yeah.
do like humans because I'm still not good with like blending the skin tone or
Yeah.
doing like lifelike eyes to stuff. But yeah,
How much?
that's kind of
How much of a difference is there then between a custom head sculpt and say one that you get from like Hasbro? Is there a big difference?
not too much. So the main difference is a lot of the times what you got to do is the ports on the bottom, like where the head will connect to the neck.
Right.
A lot of times it's not like made to fit like a Hasbro head would be, where you could just like pop it on, pop it
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
You basically just got to put a little bit of blue tack or sticky tack inside the head
Right. Right.
and then put it on, and then you can pop it on, pop it off, and that's really the only difference. And the material, it's
Yeah.
not as soft as a plastic; it's more of a resin, and
Right.
that's kind of a lot of people now what they'll use is like a flex resin. So if you drop it or it falls, it's not going to shatter or break,
Yeah.
which that was an issue like early on with like 3D printing, where like
Oh,
you drop something and it would shatter, and now you got to remake the whole entire thing.
what about facial features and stuff like that? Is there a big difference within the facial features, or is it pretty much on par?
So what I notice nowadays is the people who do like 3D prints and scanning, they can get a better likeness than like Hasbro, for instance. So like Hasbro's got the Balin and Shin coming out for
Yeah.
for Ahsoka,
Yeah.
and the Balin and Shin kits that are available out there are miles above what the Shin and Balin look like from Black Series.
So why is that then? I mean, if custom makers can do it and third parties can do it, why can't Hasbro?
And see, this is a big question that I've had myself, especially with some of the reuse and tooling. Like most of the customs people are making, we're using the Black Series parts from like pre-existing figures. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
you would think if Hasbro's seeing somebody else take, this body and this body that you guys already have in your factory and can use, and we can create a brand new character out of it, you'd think they'd be able to do something the same. And it's
Yeah.
so night and day to where I don't know what they're thinking sometimes because it's like, hey, you guys have these parts, they're available. Why aren't you using them to make this figure and getting it out there to people? And it's like,
Yeah.
I understand the cost, I understand everything, but if we're doing it with your parts, you should be able to do it. And I think the thing in disparating is they're doing everything on like a quantity basis. So they're
Yeah.
printing, thousands and thousands of this figure, as opposed to like a 3D printer who's maybe just doing that one head. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I think that's where it comes into. They're taking a little bit more time with the design. They're taking a little
Yeah.
bit more effort in crafting that specific thing, as
Yeah.
opposed to Hasbro who's mass producing it. So I think that's where stuff gets lost. But the real thing for me is I love world building and I love
Yeah.
being able to create dioramas and have set pieces from different things. Like, you
Yeah.
know, we used to have when we were kids. And to me, I think that's the biggest market that Hasbro's not addressing. And it's like, you guys are doing it for TVC, but you refuse to touch 6-inch scale. And it's like,
Yeah.
if you guys could do little things, like even the Jabba the Hutt that just came out,
Yeah.
how nice would it have that been to come with a dais, like a
Yeah.
simple little dais that you could have included in there with that set for Jabba.
Mm.
And now you're giving people something that they can display their Jabba on,
Yeah.
as opposed to now you have to go out and find somebody who's 3D
Yeah.
printing it.
I mean, I guess that would have bumped the price up. But going back to why can't they do parts and use parts and for making different figures? I'm guessing that will probably come down to licensing. Do they have the
Yeah,
license to do that figure? Is
yeah,
Lucasfilm or Disney letting them do that? And you said yes, they're mass producing figures, but they're mass producing the wrong figures. We're not
yes,
getting masses and masses of army building stormtroopers or scout
yeah.
troopers or clone troopers, and well, we're getting loads of clone troopers, aren't we? I mean, in
Well,
every where you go is a clone trooper,
and
every stuff like that. But yeah, but yeah, it's a funny thing,
like
isn't it?
for me, that's the only thing I could think of. So like with that Balin and Shin figure, for instance, Shin is way taller than she's supposed to be, and
Yeah,
Balin's way smaller than he's supposed to be. So you right away when you get those two figures, you're gonna have to swap out their thigh piece to make them accurate height. So you
yeah,
got to find a different thigh piece that's taller for Balin,
yeah,
and then you have to find a female one that's smaller for Shin, and
yeah,
swap them out right away. And it's like, do you want to do that, or do you want to just buy the two figures that you need to make the kits and customs, and just buy the parts and do it yourself? And it's like,
yeah,
because you're gonna have to fix it either way when you open it. So it's like,
yeah. Fair
damned
enough.
if you do, damned if you don't, I guess.
With your displays, I mean, I noticed that you've done a lot of dioramas. I mean, I guess you built those yourself, did you?
Yeah, or got them 3D printed. Some of them are 3D printed pieces.
Yeah,
I have like the Mandalorian cabin, and that's like a big 3D print piece.
yeah,
I have the Rebels mural, which was something that came out this year
yeah.
that people
That looks
did, and
awesome. I like that. That does look good.
that's one of my favorites. And then yeah, just different stuff. It's been fun. I've never been crafty. I've never been like, um, hey, I can come up with this, or how do I make
Mm.
this? It was never in my like
Do you
in my.
do you think do you think in the long run it will save you money? Because I'm guessing if someone like Hasbro did do those kind of pieces for the Black Series, they would charge a fair bit of money. I mean, would you say that you were kind of like saving money by doing it yourself?
Yes and no, because some of this stuff can get really expensive, especially like some of the
Yeah.
kits to make a figure. Depending on like what you're doing, it can cost upwards of like $50, $60 just to make like one
Wow.
custom figure.
Yeah.
Depending on if you're buying, a head sculpt, or you're buying a kit, or whatever the
Mm.
parts you actually need to make the figure, you might need to, mash up two figures to make it, or whatever. So it's like you have to factor in the cost of all those things when you're doing it. So it does
Yeah.
sometimes get really expensive for just one figure.
Wow.
Um, but with some of the 3D printing stuff, to me, it's like if Hasbro's not going to do it, then I'm not. I don't see them changing their mind and end up like, hey, we're going
Yeah.
to do this, we're going to do that. So
Yeah.
at that point, you're really only looking at one market for that type of stuff if that's what you're into. You know what I mean? Like if you want to build consoles, or you want to make whatever, you're those are your options pretty much. Or it's
Yeah.
like, Hasbro's not making it, so they're automatically not even catering to that audience that would
Do
buy
you
that
think
stuff.
do you think as far as the Black Series is concerned, Hasbro have had their hands burnt twice by failed Black Series HasLab projects? I mean, for
Yeah.
me, they could have done, they could have done a Death Star interior with the
Hmm.
wall panels and stuff like that. They
Yep.
could have
Yeah.
done a Tantive 4 interior with the wall
Yep.
panels. Do you know what I mean? There are
And
certain things
and
they could have
that
done with
stuff
that.
you can get like 3D printed from people,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
because they have it available, and it maybe cost you about $200 for like the tentative hallway, but you'll
yeah,
have a tentative hallway just as good as the TVC version, that they did. So
yeah,
it's like, in that regard, like, yeah, you're paying for something to make, and you might have to paint it, you might have to, sand it
mm,
down or do something when you actually get it.
yeah,
But in that regard, yeah, I don't see why they're not addressing that market. I don't see why it's something that they're leaving money on the table for. And
yeah.
maybe it has to do with, like you said, the fact that they got burned with the HasLabs. Because unfortunately, I don't see them doing a Black Series HasLab probably again. Like,
Do you know the thing is? The thing is, and we you discussed a bit of GI Joe earlier, the classifieds. They have got a 6-inch line. Well, the
yep,
classified is the 6-inch line.
yeah.
They 2 successful HasLabs with
Yeah,
his tank.
and beautiful. Like that his tank is incredible.
Yeah,
And
and the
like
Dragonfly, you know,
yeah,
something it
incredible
can be
HasLabs.
done.
And that's what I'm saying. They're selling vehicles at retail. They're selling the
Yeah,
treble bubbles. They're selling motorcycles. We're gonna have
yeah,
the Jeep soon. So like
yeah,
I that's the thing that baffles me the most. I think is like you're all one company. So why can one brand out of your company get things right? Even the something as small as the three-tiered price point I always talk about is something that why isn't that on every brand in Hasbro? Like where we know, hey, if it's going to fall under one of these prices based on what's included with the figure, and
yeah,
this is how much you're going to pay, not a range from $26 to $45, depending on like what Star Wars wants to do with a
yeah,
deluxe, quote
yeah.
unquote. But I don't know. There's things with internally with the company themselves that make me scratch my head sometimes. And it's just
The,
like
th- the thing
you
is, I
guys are
think,
doing it right, they're not, and you guys all work for the same company. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
I think with Star Wars they do have their hands tied by licensing. Whereas
Yeah,
Hasbro with GI Joe, I think they've got kind of like the free
yeah,
reign to do as and what
yeah.
they like. But what bugs me is the fact that you're paying. I think how much was that his tank? You're looking about 200,
I think it was.
$250,
I
$300, something
think
like that.
it was 350, something like that for the
Yeah,
his
yeah,
tank.
yeah.
The
And you get
helicopter.
electrics with that. You get light up cockpit. You get lights and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And it's the same with the Dragonfly.
Yeah,
You know, you're paying more money for the sail barge, for the Razor Crest, and
yep,
for the Ghost, and they've
yep,
not got no working lights or anything like that. I'm not too worried about sound, but they could have put
yeah.
lights in there. They could have put cockpit lights. Do you know what I mean? Just certain things in there that they've done
Something.
with the classified,
Yeah, and like
and you're
that's the
paying that
thing
much
to me.
more money
It's
than what you are.
and like even with the Rancor, like the Rancor should have been funded, but that was their own fault when they did the presentation. Like
Well, that was poor. Yeah,
them
they've got
including
themselves behind that.
them including stormtroopers with the Rancor when there was never a stormtrooper with the Rancor, like never.
Yeah,
Not having the Rancor keeper included in the initial, like that should have been your first tier with the Rancor
yeah,
is
yeah,
McNeely. So
yeah,
like I don't know. There's things with that team sometimes that I'm just left like why? Even the new set that just got advertised, the B1 battle droid or B2 battle droid and the C3PO with the
oh yeah,
on
yeah,
the battle droid head. And
yeah,
it's like who sat in a room and knew that for years people wanted that B2 battle droid, right? And then the initial offering that you're going to release it in is in a two-pack, number one. And then the figure you're forcing people to buy with it, you can't even do anything with. So like instead of just including a small B1 battle droid head that you could swap out and make that a regular battle droid and 3PO, and if you wanted to, you could put the 3PO head on or just army build a regular battle droid.
yeah,
To me, that was the most baffling thing of like, you guys just got done talking about how much money you lost the day before and how many people you're going to lay off. And then here's a prime example of like, this pack could have been the B2 battle droid and the B1 battle droid in a
yep,
two pack for army builders. You would have sold probably another couple thousand of them.
yeah.
Instead, you shot yourself in the foot by making this just a 3PO. And it's like, what are you supposed to do with multiples of those 3PO when people want the battle droid? And
Yeah,
it's
it
prime
is
example.
absolutely crazy, isn't it? I just
Yeah.
I don't get that. Um, moving on. Do you have a sentimental piece within your collection or a prized piece within your collection?
Um, so I have some things from like the Disney parks that I've gotten. I
Okay.
have a BD1 life, the life size droid from Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah,
I have a
yeah,
couple like of those things that are like sentimental to me just because like I've acquired them from other people. So
yeah,
it's been like it's cool having that type of stuff. The real cool thing I think is in my Star Wars collection itself. It's a lot of the pieces that I'll buy from people are the 3D printed sculpts and heads and stuff like that.
yeah,
They're spread out throughout my whole display. So I think in that regard, I think that's kind of like my prized possession is having these pieces from friends of mine. And like
yeah.
every time I go look at my display, so and so made that, or I got that from this person. And
That's
it's
cool. Yeah,
cool. It's like it's almost like a community feel because like you have your friends helping out with your collection in a way.
yeah,
It's a cool like
yeah.
little. little
I mean,
feeling when you
you
look at that
saying
type of
about
stuff.
that, I didn't realize just how amazing this community was until until I actually joined it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Properly got
yeah.
immersed in it and stuff like that. And I'm having a great time. It's just absolutely awesome.
It
You know what I
really
mean?
is, and it's so cool to meet people from like all over the world that you know
Absolutely.
you normally would never talk to, never have an interaction with. And some
Yeah.
of these people that I've met, I interact with them more than people I see on a daily. You know what I mean? Like people
Yeah.
in real life, and it's like it's amazing to me. Like some of these people just really became like really great friends. Like all the lads in Ireland, Shabby, all these
Yeah.
different people from all over. It's so cool. It really is.
Yeah, it is. That's absolutely awesome. What about a grail piece? And when I say grail piece, I don't necessarily mean you've got to spend heaven and earth to get it. But is there something that
Okay.
you might have seen like 4 or 5 months ago in a store? You went back to get it and it had gone. You've not seen it since. So, do you have a grail piece that you want in your collection?
So I had a Grail piece, and
Had-
I got it
Uh,
last at the beginning of this year. So
oh
let me
wow!
I can grab it actually and show
Yeah,
it to
please
you.
do. Please do.
It's the San Diego Comic Con Thrawn box
Oh,
set.
look at that.
This was a piece that I had wanted, since pretty much it came out, and it was
Yeah,
so hard to find. And oh man, this just is beautiful, beautiful. And I didn't
well done.
open it. I didn't take the figure out. I didn't take anything out. I just
Yeah,
have it on display like this, and it's it's fantastic. And
it.
luckily, you're gonna laugh. I literally got this the day before they announced like him being in Ahsoka.
Oh
So like
wow!
I found it online. Somebody had it, I think for like 150, which really wasn't bad. Uh, and the next day it shot up to almost $400. So like literally, I thought the guy who sold it to me was gonna like cancel the sale because that next day was Celebration and Lars came walking out on stage and
Yeah.
literally the price shot up through the roof for. So I was worried the whole entire time. Like, am I actually gonna get this?
Would you have been able to cancel the set? Well, I guess you would have done, but then I think it'd have been a bit mean if you'd have actually paid the price that you paid for it, that he
Yeah,
cancelled it, and then you look at it the like sort of like next day or a couple of hours later, and he's put it up in price. I think that would have been a bit naughty myself, but
yeah,
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 that
yeah.
is a fantastic
I
piece,
could have
isn't it?
seen him. I could have seen somebody doing it though, like realizing like,
Yeah,
hey, I just sold it for this. Let me refund the guy his money, and I'll relist this back up for what the new price is. But
yeah,
luckily he didn't. I got it literally, uh, that day before
yeah.
Celebration where he
I mean,
came out
fair
on
play
stage.
to him. Fair play to him.
Yeah, I was just I
He's,
was so
he's probably at
happy.
home going, "Oh no!"
Yeah, I could have made another couple $100, and yeah. So I got very lucky
Oh,
in that
dear.
regard. And then
Um,
the other one was Slave Leia. But I was able to pick her up too, like early on when I started getting
is
into
this
the.
the 6-inch Black
Yeah,
Series?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I do have her. I was lucky enough. I found her. I can't remember where I found her. Where did I find her?
A lot of people
Um,
found her on clearance, like early on. Like I guess
yeah.
when the line first started, she was like readily available everywhere. But then as time's gone on, and they're not going to do another one as long
Yeah.
as
Well, no.
Kathleen Kennedy's in charge.
Do you reckon it's Kathleen Kennedy then that's holding that figure back?
She, as far as I know, she's the one who said like they'll never do a Slave Leia merch as long as she's president of Lucasfilm, and that's
Lucasfilm, for the love of God, get rid of
so like as far as I know, when Disney made that acquisition, she was the one that came out and made that statement, and like ever since it's just a non-touch item. Nobody they won't go back and do another one, nothing. So
Is it? Do you think
unfortunately,
then? I mean, do you? Well, she didn't have any blinking qualms about it when she was part of the Lucasfilm when they did Return of the Jedi back in
yeah, yeah,
1983. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? So Why now all of a sudden has she gone? Oh no, no. She must have known what. I mean, the thing is, I don't look at it as her representing being a slave. I don't. I don't look at it like that.
Yeah, no, I don't either. And I think like even with the new name now, everybody calls it Hut Slayer Leia, and like
Yeah,
that's what she is. Like she's a badass in that situation. So like
yeah,
to me, it's something that should be more celebrated. And like maybe Kerry had some kind of personal problem later on with that whole ordeal. That maybe that's why things aren't like reproduced of it.
yeah. Well, I guess. I just think
But
it's a
but to
shame, and
me,
I think.
it's such an empowering moment in the movie. Like when you
Well,
when
yeah,
she's in this precarious position, but then she uses it to her advantage to get Jabba, when she
Yeah.
can. So like, I don't know. I've always looked at it the opposite way than I guess some people might look at it, and I guess maybe
Oh
that's
no, I'm like you. I mean, I'm like
yeah.
you. I look at it the same way as you look at it, and I think that's half the reason why, because they didn't have, well, Malakili, they didn't
Mm,
have like Slave Leia, and they didn't have Ula, and like
yeah,
Ula and the Leia figures are two figures that they will never do, simply because it's got nothing to do with them wearing skimpy outfits. Because you look at some of these Marvel figures
yes.
that they're churning out. I mean, you're telling me that some of them outfits the women are wearing are quite skimpy, aren't they? So,
And
like,
like even even
but
even some of the like Ula, for instance, she's not even really in a skimpy outfit. She's got like that one piece over the top of it. So like,
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. I agree with you though. Like their outfits are no different than a wrestling figure, no different than
yeah.
some of the Marvel Legends that you'd find. So it really is. It's
I
I
mean,
don't
if
I don't
if they were
understand.
that bothered about it, I mean, look, people wouldn't have agreed with it. But I mean, you look at the Slave one, for example. They've not changed the name of it, but they've taken the Slave one off, and it's called um,
Boba Fett
Boba
Starship
Fett
now.
Starship
Yeah.
now. You could have had like um, Jabba Slayer, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Or Jabba's Dancer. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah, and like
ah,
I think at one point in Book of Boba, he calls it like the fire spray gunship. Why couldn't you just, all right, fire spray gunship is the new name for it. All right,
yeah,
that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get the dumbing down of it where like slave has to be
right,
removed from it, like because it was never about. You know what I mean? Like I
yeah,
understand the times that we live in, but it was never about that. You know what I mean? Like it was
no,
never referencing anything of that. It was never
no.
nothing. So yeah,
No,
I don't
it's
understand that
just
in that regard.
the day we live in, the days we're living in,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah.
What made you start a YouTube channel, and did you have any influences?
Um, so I think the main thing was just having fun. And really that's what it's been like on my channel. Like it's more so just to hang out and like talk to people and you know interact about things that we like or talk about like things that we
Yeah,
like. That's really what started it for me. I hopped on Three Men and a Monkey Lizard when they were doing that show, and I
yeah,
used to like pop on here and there. And that's kind of, I guess, what made me just start my own channel because I was
okay,
already coming on with them and just
yeah,
and then yeah, from there it just kind of turned into what it's turned into, where like I do reviews. I'd like to do more lives and stuff like that, but I don't have a computer, so I'm in the process of saving
yeah,
to buy a computer so then I can start doing more live streams and like having people on my channel. Right
yeah,
now I hop on with other people a lot, and then I'll do like my reviews and stuff like that on my channel. But yeah, that's in 2024. I would like to start getting on a little bit more. Have
yeah,
people like you, Shabby guys, come on and we just hang out
yeah.
and talk about toys.
Yeah. Awesome, awesome. How easy then do you find it to do content? Because I mean, not saying it's difficult because you haven't got, like, you don't do live streams, but
Mhm.
do you find it quite easy to come up with ideas that you want to put in as content on your channel?
Not all the time. So sometimes I'll experiment, like trying something out. Like for a while, I was doing
Yeah,
something where like I would go pick up new comic. I collect comics, so I would go to my comic book shop on Wednesday, and then I'd do a little video about like, hey, these are the comics that I picked up, and this is kind of what happened this week. And it didn't get over. Like people weren't watching it, and so like it was like, all right, well, I'm kind of just wasting my time editing and doing all this if no one's gonna like tune in and watch it. And it was just one of the things that like I guess because my channel is more so action figure reviews and talking
yeah,
about Star Wars, people didn't want to like I wasn't getting that comic audience to come in. So yeah, that was one of the things that like I found like tough. It was like I really like doing this video and talking about these comics that are coming out, but if no one's watching it, I'm kind of just wasting my
but
time.
don't you think, if you'd have persevered with it, you might have got that audience? Because sometimes audiences don't just come like that.
Yeah,
Sometimes it
yeah,
might
no,
take.
I did it for quite a lot. I just noticed that like people who were on my channel all the time weren't, like that wasn't something for them. So
Yeah,
maybe I'll try to go back to it with a different presentation, especially if I can
yeah,
do it maybe on a live stream. I think that would be a little bit different. And like, hey,
yeah,
I'm just gonna hop on. Here, let's talk about the comics and stuff came out. as opposed to
Yeah.
like recording a video and putting it out. But
Mm.
yeah, I think you run into it sometimes where like my Star Wars videos do pretty good. You know, people I think that's what a lot of my audience tunes in for is like the Star Wars stuff. But
Yeah.
then you'll notice every once in a while, like you'll venture out and oh, let me do a Marvel Legends review, and then it doesn't do as well. And it's like you could tell the algorithm and stuff like that. But just overall, I think we all get frustrated with like how much time and effort goes into like making
Yeah.
something. And then if people aren't like interested in it, it's like, well, I just kind of wasted a bunch of time on this. And, you know, people aren't
Yeah.
going to
I mean,
appreciate or see how much work you put into it.
well, yeah,
But
because it is a lot of work and it is time
yeah,
consuming. I've got to admit, and I never realized that until I actually
yeah,
started doing it. And I just think,
yeah,
wow, you know,
yeah.
I mean, sometimes because I don't do reviews as such. I mean,
Hmm.
excuse me, there's loads of fireworks going off at the back there, so it sounds like
Oh,
World War
don't
Three at
worry.
the moment. So, but yeah, I mean, I kind of like do overviews because everybody knows that he's got articulation and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So that's not for
Yeah.
me. I don't do that. But
Yeah, and
sometimes
I
when
try
I'm
to
doing a
stay away
video,
from like that type of stuff with the reviews. I try to just mainly focus on like the figure and like the
yeah,
quality and things I like, things I don't like.
yeah.
Simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah, but you do different cuts, don't you? You do different takes. I mean, sometimes I can sit here for at least what an hour and a half to do like a 15-minute video, and that's simply
Yeah.
because I know what I want to say, but my mouth's stupid and it won't come out with what I want to say. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, why did I say that? And I've got to take it, and do you know what I mean? It is time consuming. So
Yeah. No, it is very time consuming. And that was I think that was like one of the other things that like I didn't realize when I got into it because it was more so there was some channels that like I'd watch, but I thought
yeah,
I could do better. You know what I mean? And it was like I can do what they're doing. And like that I think really prompted me into like finally starting my own channel and like, all right, you know
yeah,
what? Or I got annoyed with certain channels that I'd watch and like I
yeah,
don't like how they're covering this or I don't like how they're doing this. So since there's nobody else that's doing this specific thing, like let me try.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that kind of influenced it too a little bit. But yeah,
yeah.
it is a lot of
I
time
mean,
and effort that goes into it.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I will, pass on a message. I don't know if you heard this before, but I mean, a good friend of mine, Chris Miwa from Chasing 80s Toys, he's turned
Mm.
around and he said this to quite a few people that you are making videos for the people that will want to watch your videos.
Yeah,
Simply, so it doesn't matter if you get one or two people watching them and stuff like that. You know,
yeah,
it's content
yeah.
that do you know what I mean? It's so it is difficult because I know some people are like, oh, crikey, this one hasn't done this as well this week, or that would,
Mhm.
it's really
And
weird, isn't it,
especially
how YouTube
and
works?
especially I guess when you're monetized, it's a little bit different too, because you're really like trying to hammer, all right, I made this much and I want to hit that again and this, that, and that. So like I could see where from a creator standpoint, sometimes it could probably get a little overwhelming where
Well,
like you're
yeah, I mean,
you're
if
more
you're,
so you're more so focused on that aspect than you
yeah,
are of like the quality of what you're making.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think that's one of the things is just try to have fun and like enjoy
oh,
what you're doing because if
yeah,
you're not, then you're kind of wasting your time in the long run of like
yeah,
making the video, doing
and then,
everything. If
and,
you're
and I
not
think
gonna have
that will
fun,
show as well. If you're not enjoying it and having fun doing it, then I think that will
yeah,
show. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes I can get frustrated, and I've had like a real shitty day at work, so to speak,
yeah,
and I come
yeah.
home and I do a video, and then that's probably why sometimes it takes me about 3 or 4 takes to say,
To
two or
say
three
whatever,
lines.
do whatever.
And
Yeah,
then I just
yeah,
like, okay, right, just I'm at home now. I'm doing something that I enjoy. Then I start getting into it, and okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. So do you know what I
yeah.
mean?
And
But
and I think being honest with people is a big thing too, because like especially
yeah,
like in our community, you have a lot of influencers and people who are like being paid to say how much they love something. And like that's one of the things that like I really try to do with my channel is like I try to be brutally honest. So like if I like
yeah,
something,
yeah,
I'll gush about it. If there's something I don't like, I'll tell you. And like
yeah,
I have no affiliations, I have no partnerships with any of the toy companies,
yeah,
so it's
yeah.
like I'm gonna be free to say whatever I want to say and not
Absolutely.
feel like I'm like being inauthentic to people. And I think
Yeah,
maybe that's one of the things that I think a lot of people like is that I am very blunt and like I very much just give my opinion on things and that's
oh,
it.
no,
And
absolutely, and that's the way you should be. It's like
yeah,
Hasbro, they get a slating, and rightfully
yeah,
so in certain aspects, but you've got to take your hat off to them and credit where credit's due with some of the things
yeah,
that they have done. It's
yeah,
not all doom and gloom. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah,
I think when a company gets bad publicity and people start bitching and moaning about it quite a bit, And then I think people's heads start to turn, and it becomes the norm. But
Yeah.
it's not always like that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's frustrating with some of the things they've done, some of the decisions they're making, and the prices they're charging. But they have done some good stuff. And as for quality issues, I mean, come on, we've had quality issues back in 70s, 80s, 90s,
Yeah.
early
Yeah. Yeah.
2000s. It's
It's
not a
always,
new thing. Do you know what I mean?
and I think a lot of people sometimes will take like some of the stuff we say the wrong way. Like people will
Mhm.
think like, oh, why are you angry about toys? And it's like, we're not angry about toys. We're angry because this is something that we're passionate about and that we enjoy.
Yeah,
And like I look from it from a standpoint of a company too. I want Hasbro to succeed so that my toys can still succeed. And like
yeah,
if you guys are failing or botching stuff on your end, now as a consumer, I have to worry if my toy line
yeah.
might
Well,
fail.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's like that's the way I think everybody should be looking from it, not
Yeah,
just from like, oh, I only want these figures and they're not making these figures, so boo Hasbro. Like,
yeah,
no, they're gonna cater to what they have to cater to in their licenses and through their partners. Obviously,
yeah,
we know Lucasfilm has a oversee on what they're making and the
yeah,
stuff that they're going to be doing. But
yeah,
even that droid pack, for instance, I would have had no problems with that droid pack had it came with a simple B1 head.
yeah,
You guys
yeah,
could have made, from a consumer standpoint, it would have been great because then people could have bought it in army build. And then from a
yeah,
business standpoint, you guys would have made more money on it and I would have been happy for you. But
yeah. It's
it's
decisions like
just,
that, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
crazy. But I mean, some
and
people.
I hate when people like jump to the conclusion of like, oh, you're always so negative about them, you're always so angry about them. Like,
Yeah,
stop collecting then. And it's like you're missing the point. Like you're missing
yeah,
why we're so passionate or why we're so you know
yeah,
angry
absolutely.
about some of these decisions and some of these things.
It's like the HasLab. I mean, some people don't agree with that Hasbro should be doing HasLabs. For
Yeah,
me, it's
yeah,
perfect business sense. It
yep,
makes perfect business sense. Say, for
yeah,
example, the sail barge. You're not going to get that. They're not going to mass produce a sail barge or any of the stuff they've done and stick
no,
it in a store because A, they're
no,
not going to have the shelf space for it. B, the price point is going to be way too high and people aren't going to buy it. So what
yeah,
happened is then that will go down reduced. Hasbro will lose out on money. At
yeah,
least this way, they know that there's like say 10,000 people that want this certain particular item.
yeah,
That's been backed. Okay, we'll make 10,000 of those. We've got the full price from 10,000 people to make
yeah.
10,000.
Yeah, and
What?
I have
Yeah,
no issues
it
with
doesn't
that
have to
at
be a
all.
big company. You know,
Nope.
it doesn't have to
Nope.
be a
And
small company.
I have no problems with the HasLabs. My only issue with the HasLabs, especially I think this year, was the fact that they weren't spaced out at all. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
literally ran a campaign. As soon as the campaign ended, that same week you were launching another HasLab. And
yeah.
I
It's
I'm a
tight on
I'm a
people's. Yeah,
I'm a collector that's in multiple lines. So for me, it's like, all
yeah,
right, guys, you gotta give us a break in between some of these HasLabs. Like I can't shell out $500 and then just
yeah,
expected to shell out another $500 like the following month span, two
yeah,
month span. Like
yeah,
that to me is the only thing that like I wish they'd space it out better and figure it out better as far as like giving us some time in between
yeah.
them. But the overall concept, I have no issues with,
No,
and I don't even have issues. I know some people were talking about like with the his tank, for instance. If GI Joe was going to put that at retail and dumb it down, like they're going to remove the lights from it, or and you won't have all the accessories, but they'll sell it at retail so more people can get the his tank. I have no problem with that, but
no.
I know
Likewise.
I know there's a handful of people that will complain that that was the HasLab
Yeah.
campaign. You can't sell that on, like that's why we bought the HasLab. And like, so I see that dilemma when during the HasLab
Yeah, but I
campaigns.
mean,
I'm
if
like,
there's glaring differences to it, I mean,
yeah,
if you're going to sell it at retail, you're not going to be getting those exclusive figures with it, are you?
yeah, yeah.
I
And you're
mean,
probably different color, probably
yeah,
no electrical lights in it. You know what
yeah,
I mean? If
yeah,
there are the electrical lights, all right, now you're kind of offering the same thing. Maybe you don't offer the rockets or whatever. You know what I mean? You got to dumb it down a little bit, but still, I have no issues with that
no,
because to
likewise.
me, it's something you have people that are getting into these lines all the time and
Yeah,
maybe weren't collecting at the time that HasLab was going
mm,
on and now want it. So like that's the only issue I think you run into with the HasLab of like
yeah,
maybe you should do some sort of reissue down the line for this HasLab. Like maybe after 5 years or 10 years after that HasLab came out, maybe you like reissue it on a small market type thing.
yeah. Yeah, why
I don't
not?
know.
Why not?
Yeah.
Right, we're at the hour, so I've got 2 more questions for you, but that's all cool. What gives you that toy collecting buzz?
I love finding stuff in stores. If like I
Yeah,
don't know how you are, but like to me, like if I can find something in a store and cancel a pre-order, that kind of gives me like that high for the week of like, man, I found this in the
yeah,
store. Like it's such a better feeling because it almost feels like you accomplished something while finding something
yeah,
that you wanted.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I think that would probably be it. Or like it's nice when stuff comes, but I've learned that sometimes having too much stuff piled up, like that just comes in boxes, you just kind of
yeah,
go through it, open it, and you put it on your shelf, and you're not really appreciating, as much as
yeah,
maybe I found this in the store. Let me take the time to open it. Let me take the time to like pose it and appreciate it and go through it. So I think that would probably be it.
yeah. Awesome stuff. And you prefer so I've just like yeah. I mean I don't know why I'm asking this question because you've just answered it, so I'm not even going to answer the question. So I don't know where I'm going with that. Anyhow, right. Last question. What does your collection mean to you?
It means peace and tranquility. Honestly, this is where I like to get away. Is my toy room.
Mm,
I like to. I find it's got to be like my place of comfort and my place of peace, and where I can come and just relax and settle down. And that's really what it does for me. It's like I said, really nice to have the community aspect and be able to
yeah,
interact with people and do these types of things. Um, that's really, I think, the most like fun in the collecting for me
yeah.
personally.
I mean, that's a fantastic way of describing it, peace and tranquility, because I've never ever sort of like looked at it in that respect. I've used the words oh crikey, it's gone now. Bloody hell. Calming,
I mean,
relaxing. I've never looked at it like as peace and tranquility and stuff like that. And it's
yeah, because I think there's so much going on in the world today that we live in that
yeah,
like it's a nice little distraction, I guess you could say, like from real world is like I can just kind of collect my stuff and be in my own little world with my stuff and
yeah,
kind of ignore the outside world. And I think
yeah,
for a lot of us, that's what it is. It's a nice little break from reality and
absolutely.
calling back to a lot of the nostalgia and memories that like are associated with some of these things. Like a
Yeah,
lot of the stuff that I buy, it's tied to like either something I had when I was a kid
yeah,
or a memory from when I was a kid that was like a super happy memory. So I think that's where a lot of this stuff like really, meshes and connects with
yeah,
being that peaceful, tranquil thing because you are like when I look at the Power Rangers, I think of my grandmother when I was a kid, and going to Toys R Us with her, and so like just seeing them in my collection brings back those memories and like stuff like that. The Spider-Man stuff, same thing. Like going to Toys R Us and buying those on the shelves, and now here I am, 20 years later, and here they are in 6-inch form with all these accessories and stuff, and it's
yeah.
just
That's cool.
it's a really
So
cool thing.
cool. That's cool. Ed, it's been absolutely fantastic chatting to you. Unfortunately, that
Oh yeah,
has
we
come to
could
the
just
end, man.
talk for
It's
hours.
absolutely awesome. Yeah, yeah. The thing is, I never feel an hour's enough, and you
Yeah.
know, but yeah, it's just been fantastic. So I really do appreciate you popping on and taking part, mate,
Oh,
and
not,
being part
not
of the
not a
series.
problem at all. Not a problem
Where
at
can
all.
people find you on social media?
I'm at Ways of the Sith on everything. So YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on Threads, but I don't go on it.
Oh,
I think I
okay.
did what everybody did and like created one, but never use it.
Yeah,
But
awesome.
yeah,
Well, what I'll do then is I'll leave the link to your YouTube, Twitter, and well, X, isn't it now?
yeah.
Instagram account, social media platforms. I won't put Threads or whatever you call it. What is it called?
For what? Oh,
Th-
Threads, Threads. Yeah,
Threads.
yeah. That's the
Threads.
Instagram, Twitter. Their
Oh, is
version
it?
of Twitter.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I won't put that. But yeah, again, thank you so much, man. Really do
Oh, not
appreciate
a
it. Like
problem.
I say,
Thank
I
you for
know you've
having
not
me.
been feeling 100%, but it's been absolutely fantastic. So thank you
Yeah,
so
no,
much.
thank you. Thank you very much for having me. This was awesome.
Yeah.
Like I said, we could sit here all afternoon and just talk about toys.
Oh yeah, you can't beat talking about toys. It's awesome stuff. Awesome stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
unfortunately, like I said, that has come to the end of it. So I just want to thank everybody um, for watching. If you stayed with us to the very end, again, very much appreciated. This will be the last one until next year. So January, I will start pre-recording and putting my collecting life back up onto YouTube. But for now, the series is going to have a short break. So we've hit episode 70. So I'm hoping at some point during next year, we will reach the milestone of 100 episodes. That will be amazing. And generally, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who watches, everybody who takes part, because if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't have a series. So yeah, massive thank you. Really genuinely mean that. Thank you so much. Anyhow, that's it for the time being. Take care, stay safe, and we shall return with the series in the new year. Bye for now.
Happy holidays, everybody.